In the busy city of Moro, life moved quickly. People filled the streets, the markets were always loud, and everywhere you turned, there was the scent of roasted maize or fried plantain in the air. This was the home of Anaya, an 18-year-old girl with a quiet nature but a strong heart. Anaya lived in a small house with her mother, younger sister, and her stepbrother Leo. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving her mother to raise her children on her own. Anaya was known in her community for being respectful and serious about her studies. She was part of a community youth group that encouraged young people to focus on their goals and respect themselves. Anaya's mother was proud of her, as she always worked hard and rarely caused any trouble. But there was one person who unsettled her stepbrother, Leo. Leo was a few years older and often got into trouble. He would stay out late, argue with their mother, and give Anaya these strange, unsettling looks. She never felt safe around him, but she kept quiet, hoping he would leave her alone. Still, his presence in the house was like a shadow over her peace. Anaya's grandmother, who lived in a nearby village before she passed away a few years earlier, used to tell her stories of strong women in their family. "Our blood carries strength, Anaya," her grandmother would say. "We are not weak. Our ancestors protect us, even in this world." Anaya didn't quite understand what she meant, but she liked the idea that she was protected somehow. One evening, after attending a meeting with her youth group called the Rising Stars Club, this group was made up of young people from different neighborhoods, all coming together with a common goal: to support each other, learn good values, and focus on a brighter future. The group held weekly meetings where they discussed topics like self-respect, helping the community, and staying on the right path in life. Anaya met a young man named John. He was friendly, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in her. Anaya felt at ease with him and enjoyed talking with someone who shared her values. John was also in the youth group and believed in focusing on the future. They began spending time together after meetings, talking about their dreams and plans. Anaya was happy to have a friend like him. But little did she know that meeting John would change everything. Anaya had been seeing John after each Rising Star Club meeting for a few weeks. They talked about their dreams, their families, and their plans for the future. She liked his company. He was easy to talk to, and he seemed to genuinely care about her. She felt a sense of comfort with him that she hadn't felt around other people in a long time. One evening, after a club meeting, John offered to walk her home. It was late, and the streets were quieter than usual. Anaya hesitated, but she agreed, thinking it was safe to trust him. They laughed and talked as they walked along the dark road, the streetlights casting long shadows on the ground. But suddenly, as they approached a secluded area, the friendly feeling faded. John's mood changed, and he began to act strangely. He stopped walking, pulling her close to him in a way that made Anaya uncomfortable. She tried to pull away, but he held her tighter, his expression shifting into something she didn't recognize. "John, please let me go. I have never done this before," Anaya begged, fear creeping into her voice. But John didn't listen. He tightened his grip, leaning in close. He took off his pants. "Come on, Anaya. Don't act like you don't want this," he said, his voice low and unsettling. Anaya's heart pounded in her chest as she struggled to push him away. She felt trapped and helpless, her mind racing with panic. She remembered her grandmother's words, "You are protected, Anaya. The spirit of our ancestors is with you." In that moment of desperation, Anaya felt something strange. A sudden, intense energy rushing through her body, like a spark that came from deep within. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel it growing stronger, pushing its way to the surface. Then, as John tried to force himself on her, Anaya's body reacted in a way she didn't expect. There was a sharp, fierce pain that didn't come from her, but from him. John gasped and stumbled back, his face pale and filled with shock. He clutched himself, wincing in agony, as if something had hurt him deeply. Anaya, still in shock, realized that her vagina had somehow fought back, hurting him in a way she couldn't fully understand. She didn't know how or why, but it was clear that something within her had acted to protect her. Without a second thought, Anaya turned and ran. She ran as fast as her legs could carry her, not stopping until she reached her home. She slammed the door behind her, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Her mother and sister were asleep, unaware of the terror she had just faced. Anaya went to her room, still shaking with fear and confusion. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She couldn't understand what had happened, but she knew one thing for sure. Her grandmother's words were true. She was protected, even in ways she could not yet explain. A few days had passed since the terrifying night with John, and Anaya hadn't heard from him since. She felt both relieved and nervous, unsure of what to expect when she saw him again. But at the next Rising Star Club meeting, she overheard some of the other members whispering that John had been admitted to the hospital. Nobody seemed to know why, and John hadn't told anyone what had happened that night. Perhaps he was too ashamed to explain, especially if it meant admitting what he had tried to do. Anaya felt a mix of emotions, relief that he hadn't told anyone, but also a deep fear. She couldn't explain what had happened that night or why her body had reacted the way it did. She just wanted to move past it, but something in her knew that her life would never be the same. After the meeting, she left the club feeling a bit restless. On her way home, she ran into Dave, a classmate she had noticed a few times at school. Dave was tall, with a kind smile and an easy charm. He pulled up beside her in his car, rolling down the window and calling out to her. "Anaya, right?" he asked, his smile making her feel a bit lighter. "Want a ride home?" Anaya hesitated but agreed. She climbed into his car, trying to keep her thoughts calm as they drove. Dave was friendly, asking her about school and her interests. She found herself relaxing in his company, even laughing at his jokes. For a moment, she felt normal again, like maybe she could forget everything that had happened. When they arrived at her house, Dave parked the car and turned to her, his eyes softening. "I really enjoyed this, Anaya. Would you like to go out sometime? Maybe grab something to eat?" Anaya felt her heart skip a beat. She liked Dave. He was kind, and she could feel a connection, but fear gripped her as she thought of what had happened with John. What if something went wrong again? She couldn't take that risk. I don't think that's a good idea," she said softly, looking away. Dave seemed a bit disappointed, but nodded, respecting her answer. "That's okay, Anaya. Maybe some other time." She thanked him for the ride and hurried inside, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. She knew she had made the right choice, but it still hurt to push someone kind away. That night, Anaya couldn't stop thinking about the strange power inside her. It had acted on its own, without her control, and she didn't understand it. She knew she needed answers. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "You are protected, Anaya." But she needed to know what that really meant. The next day, she decided to visit Mr. Jason, a young healer known for helping people with spiritual issues. She had heard stories of his abilities and thought he might have the answers she needed. When she arrived at his small hut, he greeted her with a gentle smile and motioned for her to sit. "What brings you here, my child?" he asked, his voice calm. Anaya hesitated, unsure of how to explain. "I feel like there's something strange inside me, my vagina to be precise. Something that acts on its own when I'm in danger. Sometimes our spirits carry powers that protect us. Let me take a closer look." Anaya felt a bit uneasy, but allowed him to examine her. She lay back, closing her eyes as he began. But soon she noticed his hands lingering in places they shouldn't. Her heart raced as she realized he was behaving inappropriately. Suddenly, there was a flash of pain and a scream. She opened her eyes, recoiling in shock, staring at his hands, which were now injured and bleeding. He looked at her in horror, his face pale. Terrified, Anaya jumped up and ran out of the hut, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached home, her mind filled with questions and fear. When she arrived, she found her mother lying on the bed, looking very ill. Anaya's heart sank. Her mother was normally strong and full of life, but now she seemed weak and in pain. Anaya rushed to her side, trying to comfort her. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Her mother gave a faint smile, nodding weakly. "I'll be fine, my dear, just a bit of fever." But as Anaya looked around, she noticed her stepbrother, Leo, in the other room making out with a girl, laughing and ignoring their mother's condition. Anger rose inside her as she watched him, knowing he had no respect or care for their family. She wanted to confront him, but held back, focusing instead on caring for her mother. Anaya knew she needed to get help for her mother, but her own fears were growing stronger. Something strange was happening to her, and she didn't know if she could handle it on her own. Anaya stayed by her mother's side throughout the night, as it was already too late to go anywhere, and she couldn't act on her own, watching her struggle with fever. By morning, she decided she couldn't wait any longer. She helped her mother dress and took her to a local clinic. When they arrived, the doctor looked at Anaya with frustration, shaking his head. "Why did you wait so long to bring her here?" he demanded. "She's in critical condition. She needed help days ago." Anaya felt a pang of guilt. She had been so distracted by her own fears and confusion that she hadn't noticed her mother's worsening condition. She apologized to the doctor, promising to stay with her mother while she was treated. Her younger sister was at school, unaware of what was happening at home. Anaya felt alone and overwhelmed, struggling to hold back tears. She stepped outside the clinic to catch her breath and calm down, wondering how everything had become so chaotic so quickly. As she walked down the quiet street, she ran into Dave again. He noticed her distressed state immediately and came over, concern evident in his eyes. "Anaya, are you okay?" he asked gently. Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, she shook her head, tears finally streaming down her face. Dave took her hand, guiding her away from the clinic. "Come with me. You need to rest and clear your mind." Anaya followed him, grateful for his kindness. They walked to his house, where he led her into his room and sat beside her, listening as she shared her worries and fears. He listened patiently, offering her words of comfort. Slowly, his presence calmed her, and for the first time in days, she felt safe. As he gently brushed away her tears, Dave leaned in and kissed her softly. Anaya felt warmth in her heart, hesitating at first, but feeling a connection she hadn't felt before. She let herself relax, forgetting her worries for a moment. She was afraid she might hurt him like she had hurt John and the healer, but as she let herself go, her fears melted away. They spent the night together, sharing an intimate moment that left her feeling both cherished and free. She had finally allowed herself to trust someone, believing in the care she thought she saw in Dave. When she fell asleep, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in days. But that peace was shattered when she overheard voices from outside the room early in the morning. "Yeah, man, I won the bet," Dave's voice came through the walls, loud and clear. "I told you I could take her virginity. She was just waiting for the right guy." Anaya's heart sank, each word stabbing her with disbelief and hurt. She sat up, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. She had thought Dave was genuine, that he cared for her. But now she realized it had all been a game to him, a challenge he had won. Dave returned to the room, wearing a smug smile, unaware that she had heard him. He sat beside her, attempting to pull her close, oblivious to her pain. "Let's have another round," he said, leaning in, his tone filled with arrogance. Anaya felt her body tense, every part of her recoiling from his touch. She shook her head, turning away, but he persisted, pulling her closer despite her reluctance. Fear and betrayal surged within her, and she felt the familiar energy building inside her. Stronger this time, fierce and uncontainable. Before she could control it, her body reacted. There was a sharp pain from Dave as he gasped, clutching himself and recoiling in agony, his face twisted in shock and confusion. He looked at her, his expression changing from pain to horror. Anaya's heart pounded as she realized what had happened. She hadn't meant to hurt him, but her vagina teeth had acted on its own once again and bitten his manhood. Trembling, she gathered her belongings and fled his house, her heart heavy with a mix of guilt, fear, and heartbreak. Back home, Anaya's mind was a whirlwind of questions. Why did this keep happening? What was this strange power within her? She needed answers, and there was only one person she thought might help her understand. She went to visit Mama Agatha, a wise elder and healer in the community. Mama Agatha had always been known for her knowledge of spiritual matters, and Anaya hoped she could shed some light on what was happening. When Anaya arrived at Mama Agatha's small hut, the elderly woman greeted her warmly, sensing the turmoil in her eyes. "Child, I can see the weight you carry," Mama Agatha said gently. "Sit down and tell me what troubles you." Anaya explained everything, the strange power within her, the incidents with John, the healer, and now Dave. She spoke of the fear and confusion that had taken hold of her, desperate to understand why these things kept happening. Mama Agatha listened patiently, nodding as Anaya finished her story. She then placed a comforting hand on Anaya's shoulder. "Anaya, the power within you is not a curse. It is a gift passed down through your bloodline. Your ancestors blessed you with a spirit protector to guard you from harm. This spirit lives within you, and it reacts whenever you are in danger." Anaya looked at her, still unsure. "But why does it hurt people? I don't want to harm anyone." Mama Agatha smiled kindly. "The spirit within you only acts to protect you, my child. It does not seek to harm, but it will defend you when your safety is threatened. You must learn to understand and control it, for it is both a blessing and a responsibility." "But how can I control something I don't understand?" Anaya asked, feeling overwhelmed. "Through inner strength and balance," Mama Agatha explained. "You must come to know yourself, your fears, and your heart. Only then can you find harmony with the spirit within you." Anaya took a deep breath, feeling a sense of hope for the first time. Mama Agatha's words filled her with a new sense of purpose. She had a gift, but it was up to her to learn how to control it, to use it with care and understanding. As she left Mama Agatha's hut, Anaya felt a mix of emotions, fear, responsibility, and a budding strength she hadn't known before. She knew her journey was just beginning, and that finding balance would not be easy. But she was determined to understand herself and the power within her, to find peace with the gift that would protect her, so long as she learned to respect and control it. Anaya returned to the hospital, her heart heavy with guilt and worry. She had been so caught up in her own fears and struggles that she hadn't been there for her mother when she needed her most. Now, seeing her mother lying weakly on the hospital bed, barely able to open her eyes, filled Anaya with sorrow. She stayed by her mother's side, day and night, hoping and praying for her recovery. She held her mother's hand, whispered comforting words, and promised that she would be there for her from now on. But the illness was stronger than her hopes, and despite the doctor's best efforts, her mother's health continued to decline. One quiet evening, as the hospital lights dimmed and the world outside fell silent, her mother took her last breath. Anaya felt the life slip away from her mother's hand, leaving her with an emptiness she had never known. Tears filled her eyes as she realized she had lost the one person who had always been her strength, her guide, and her heart. Her mother was gone, and there was nothing she could do to bring her back. The guilt weighed heavily on her. She blamed herself for not noticing sooner, for not being there when her mother needed her the most. As she sat alone in the hospital room, the silence pressed down on her, filling her with a deep, hollow pain. After the funeral, Anaya returned to her home, now feeling like a stranger in the house she had once called home. The memories of her mother haunted her, each corner reminding her of the love and warmth she had lost. One day, as she sat in the living room, she overheard Leo talking to his girlfriend in the next room. She had seen this girl around the house before, the same one he had been with on the day she came back to see her mother lying gravely ill. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she quietly listened to their conversation. Leo's girlfriend sounded uneasy as she spoke, her voice filled with guilt. "Leo, I feel so bad about your mom. You told me it was nothing serious, but she had fainted before, hadn't she?" Anaya's heart froze as she listened. "Yeah, she fainted a few times," Leo replied, sounding careless. "But she always bounced back. She didn't need the hospital. Besides, we were busy." His girlfriend sighed, her voice breaking. "But on that day, she called for help. She was so weak, and I told you to take her to the hospital. You told me it wasn't serious. I wish I had insisted." Anaya's hands clenched into fists as anger and disbelief filled her heart. Her mother had been suffering, and Leo had ignored her cries for help. He had chosen his own selfish desires over their mother's well-being, ignoring her pleas and dismissing her illness. Enraged, Anaya felt bitterness building up inside her. Leo had shown no respect for their mother, treating her life as if it meant nothing. She could still feel the memory of his coldness, his lack of care, and the way he had looked at her mother's illness as nothing more than an inconvenience. At that moment, a dark thought crept into Anaya's mind. She remembered how Leo had looked at her over the years, with an unsettling gaze that made her skin crawl. He had always shown an inappropriate interest, a lingering stare that felt wrong. A twisted sense of justice began to form within her. She thought of the power within her, the one that had acted to protect her from harm. She realized that perhaps she could use it intentionally this time. She could make Leo pay for what he had done, for his cruelty and neglect. It wouldn't be difficult to get his attention. He had always looked at her with lustful eyes. Anaya felt a chilling sense of purpose as she formed a plan in her mind. She would seduce him, luring him in with the interest he had always shown her. And when the moment came, she would unleash the power within her, using it to exact the revenge she knew he deserved. Anaya's heart was beating very fast as she prepared herself, her hands steady as she applied a touch of makeup and adjusted her dress. Her plan was clear in her mind. Tonight, Leo would pay for his betrayal, for the pain he had caused their family, and especially for what he had done to their mother. Her grief had hardened into a cold, focused anger, and she felt a sense of calm as she took a deep breath, ready for what was to come. She knocked softly on Leo's bedroom door, her face composed, hiding the storm of emotions brewing inside her. When Leo opened the door, he looked surprised, his eyes flicking over her in the way she had always hated, with that unsettling hunger. "Anaya," he murmured, a twisted smile forming on his lips. "I didn't expect you here." She forced a small smile, stepping into his room with quiet confidence. Leo closed the door behind her, leaning in as he watched her closely. It didn't take long for him to take the bait. The moment she placed a gentle hand on his arm, he pulled her close, his eyes gleaming with excitement. As they moved closer, Leo's hands grew more eager, his breathing heavy with anticipation. Anaya kept her expression calm, masking the disgust she felt as she let him believe she wanted him. It didn't take long before he was fully drawn in, completely unaware of her true intentions. But in the midst of the act, something seemed to click in his mind. He paused, a flicker of memory crossing his face. "Wait," he murmured, his brow furrowing. "When we were younger, I remember you hurt me once. It wasn't your mouth." But the realization dawned too late. Before he could pull away, Anaya's hidden power surged, her body reacting just as she had intended. A sharp, piercing pain shot through Leo as her body defended itself in the most brutal way possible, biting down with a force that left him in agony. He let out a strangled scream, his face contorted in horror as he realized what had just happened. Leo stumbled back, clutching himself, his eyes wide with terror and disbelief. As he looked down, his manhood had been cut off. Blood began to pool around him as he writhed on the floor, gasping for breath. Desperate, he tried to call for help, his voice weak and filled with panic. "Max, Max, come here," he managed to call out, summoning their family dog, hoping it would come to his rescue. But when the dog appeared, it looked around the room, its nose twitching as it caught the scent of blood. In a horrifying twist, the dog went to the fallen piece of flesh, sniffing at it curiously before beginning to chew, oblivious to Leo's screams. Anaya watched, frozen in a mix of shock and terror. She had wanted revenge, but now, seeing Leo lying in his own pool of blood, the reality of what she had done sank in. Her heart pounded as she backed away, horrified by the scene before her. Without looking back, she fled from the room, her footsteps echoing through the empty house as she ran out into the night. The weight of what she had done pressed down on her, filling her with fear and confusion. She had finally gotten her revenge, but at a cost she hadn't expected. Now, all she wanted was to escape the horror she had left behind. Frantic and desperate, Anaya ran from her home, her feet carrying her to a neighboring town as night fell. She had no money, no food, and no friends in this unfamiliar place. Her heart pounded with fear as she searched for shelter, eventually finding refuge in an uncompleted building on the outskirts of town. Cold and alone, she lay curled up on the dusty floor, sleep coming in fitful waves, as she worried about what the next day would bring. Early in the morning, an older man passing by noticed her huddled in the shadows. He approached, offering her food and a place to stay. Grateful, she followed him to his home, hoping for kindness and comfort. But once inside, his demeanor changed. The man's friendly expression gave way to something darker, and he began making advances on her, his intentions clear. Anaya didn't panic. Instead, she smiled, a small, mischievous grin spreading across her face as she allowed him to think he'd overpowered her. But as he drew closer, Anaya summoned the hidden power within her, the mysterious gift of her vagina teeth, given to her to protect against those with harmful intent. With a swift and unexpected move, she used her power to teach him a painful lesson. His screams filled the room, and she quickly made her escape. From that moment on, Anaya knew she would have to fend for herself, but she was no longer afraid. Her experience had taught her a valuable lesson about trust and survival. She decided to forge her own path, determined to make an honest living while using her unique gift as protection. No longer would she allow herself to be a victim. Instead, she would wield her power wisely, safeguarding herself from those who sought to harm her. She embraced her life with fierce independence, turning her strange gift into a shield against those who harbored ill will. Her story lives on as a powerful reminder to be cautious of who we trust and to find strength within, even when the world seems unforgiving.